Purpose of these listening sessions is to hear from you, to allow for early public feedback from the widest possible range of stakeholders prior to moving forward with a formal regulation process. My name is Jennifer Smith. I am the program manager for the Stormwater Dam Safety and Flood Management Program here at MDE's Water and Science Administration. I am here today with a few of the staff from our program who are going to be co-hosts to this session. I've got here with us Ray Barr, the Deputy Program Manager. We have Amanda Malcolm, the Division Chief for our Plan Review Division. Debbie Capacity, who is the Division Chief for our Program Review Division. And then we have Michelle Crawford, also from the Program Review Division. We have 2 hours for this session. And it looks like we have quite a few people, 170 people here in attendance so far, and they're still coming in. So that's a lot of folks. So what we've done a few things today. I'll go over some of the housekeeping rules for today's agenda. First, we will discuss the housekeeping rules, and then I will take about 20 minutes to go over the process of the advanced notice of proposed rulemaking, and then I have a few minutes of a kind of an overview of the proposed regulation updates. And then we have about 90 minutes that will open up for you all to ask your questions and pose your comment, or give your comments and ask your questions. And then we'll wrap up at the end and talk about next steps. I want to point out that today's session is intended to be a listening session. So MDE's role today will be to present information and listen to your feedback. And with the exception of some very straightforward process questions, MDE will not be responding to comments or questions raised today. However, all of your comments and questions are important to us. We will be reading them all out loud today, and MDE will be considering all of the comments and questions that we receive during this process as we finalize the draft regulations and design manual for the formal rulemaking process. And that's the next steps, which I'll go over later. So for some housekeeping, the recording of today's session will be posted on MDE's website along with the slide presentation. I'm going to give you a link to that website later on in the session. Microphones and cameras, they've all been disabled due to the large number of attendees. The number now is up to 208, so that's quite a bit of people. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to use the Q&A function to post comments and questions today. The chat function has been disabled. If you go down to the bottom left corner of your screen, you should see 9 dots. If you click on those dots, you'll see a Q&A button that you can click to pose a question. Questions. And then if time allows, at the end of the session, we will have an opportunity for you to raise your hand and you can be called on to make a comment verbally. So I'm going to start by describing the advance notice of proposed rulemaking process. We also refer to this as the ANPRM process. You might have heard that term or may hear that term today. This is an informal process. This is for MDE to receive comments and questions on the current proposed regulation, draft changes, and design manual updates prior to moving forward to the more formal regulation promulgation process. So this is a pre-formal process. With this process, we have allowed for a 90-day public comment period. We started that in September, and it ends on December 19th, 2025. We have provided a project email address for you to submit comments to. And I'm going to ask one of the co-hosts, if you would, to copy that link on the slide and put that into the Q&A for the folks here to copy for themselves. We have 3 listening sessions scheduled. We've already held the first one. Today is the second virtual session. We have until 4 o'clock today for this session. And then we have one in-person session scheduled for November 13th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that's an in-person session at the MDE headquarters in Baltimore. If you are interested in attending the in-person session, you need to register. Before that session, you need to register by November 7th. There is a link for the registration on MDE's website. Again, I'll provide that link to the website in a few minutes. Also, the same MDE is going to be doing the same presentation all 3 sessions. You do not need to attend all 3 sessions. You do not need to attend any session, but if you wish to, you can attend as many as you want. They will all be recorded. They will all be posted online. So if you are not able to attend others, you can certainly go to the online recording and watch it there. So we are interested in hearing from you and the stakeholders. We welcome both comments and questions. This process is going to be very informative to us. In particular, we are hoping to get comments on a few key questions, whether the proposed design storms that we have in our draft regulations appropriately reflect the regional differences across the state in rainfall and storm intensity, whether the proposed design storms provide adequate protection while also remaining feasible to implement. We're looking for your thoughts on combined requirements for stormwater management and BMP designs, and whether the combined of those two strike the right balance between protecting for channel erosion, providing flood management, and managing water quality and groundwater recharge. And then in particular, we're also looking for your comments on our proposed effective dates of the new standards, the transitioning of vested projects, and the timelines that we have written into the regulations for local ordinance updates. And then, of course, anything that you can provide us on required or requested training from us on these new requirements and additional state support. For some background on our stormwater regulations, Maryland Stormwater Management Law can be found at the Annotated Code of Maryland at the Environmental Article, Section 4-201. And then you can find the regulations at the Code of Maryland Regulations, Title 26, Subtitle 17, Chapter 2. Maryland stormwater requirements are focused on managing the impacts of stormwater runoff from land development with a land disturbance of 5,000 square feet or more. The purpose is to manage runoff from land development activities, to control the surface water pollution and reduce flood risk. And the regulations and design criteria do this by reducing stream channel erosion, minimizing pollution and stormwater runoff, and minimizing flood risk from increases in runoff rates and volumes. The regulations also require the approving authorities to enforce Maryland's minimum standards for stormwater practice design and construction, and to implement programs for inspection, operation, and maintenance. Maryland Stormwater Management Law has been in effect since the 1980s, and the last major update was done in 2009, and that's more than 15 years ago. We've seen changes in our weather patterns. We've seen emerging technological advancements. So I think it's safe to say that our current regulations and design criteria are outdated. We have experienced an increase in the frequency and intensity of rainfall events in Maryland, and the design storms we currently use for regulating stormwater runoff are based on very old precipitation data. They use a very small data set, and therefore they're outdated and no longer protective. And in addition, over the last 15 years, we have learned through experience that the application of our current criteria is not consistent across the state, and that we need clearer standards for meeting what is meant by environmental site design to the maximum extent practicable, and that it is critical that we ensure flood protection is provided consistently for all regions of the state. So with this in mind, over the past 3 years, MDE has engaged local governments, the development community, the building industry, universities, environmental groups, all to discuss needed updates to the current regulations and design criteria. The process that we have implemented has included conducting multiple meetings and technical work sessions, and these have all been either recorded or the slide presentations have been provided and posted on our project website called Advancing Stormwater Resiliency in Maryland, otherwise known as ASTORM. The web address is on this slide. If one of my co-hosts could put that link or web address into the Q&A, that would be great. So through this process, so as I said, these presentations, these meetings, the recordings, the questions and answers that have gone on, they are all posted on our website. In addition, through this process, we have developed 4 proposals on regulation updates, 3 of which were presented to a group of stakeholders that are listed in our law as provide a formal review and comments. The 3 proposals for regulation updates, the list of stakeholder group members, and the comments that we received are all also posted on that same ASTORM website. So this ANPRM process that we're talking about today, this proposal presents the 4th iteration of regulation updates, and it's the first proposal on draft changes to our Stormwater Management Design Manual. There are 5 key elements to the proposed regulation updates. I'm going to go through these 5 key elements using the next 4 slides. So the first is updated design storms using updated precipitation data that reflect more current weather patterns and future climate change projections. You can see here on this slide, there's a map of the state of Maryland, and it's divided into 2 regions. Let's look at the water quality design storm. For Maryland, stormwater BMPs that are used for water quality treatment are designed to capture the 90th percent of the average annual runoff volume generated by the impervious areas of a site. So that's 90% of the average annual runoff volume generated by the impervious areas of a site. Since rainfall essentially equals runoff for impervious surfaces in Maryland, or Maryland uses the 90th percent average annual rainfall as the design storm for capturing runoff. Now we've updated this information. The average annual rainfall has been updated based on rainfall data collected between 1980 through 2023 by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. NOAA has analyzed data from 44 weather stations in Maryland, each with at least 10 and some with up to 40 years of rainfall data collected through 2023. The updated analysis has created these 2 regions that you see on this map. These are 2 regional precipitation values that MDE proposes to use for managing water quality. So for the Western region, this includes Garrett County, Allegheny County, and Washington counties. The water quality design storm is proposed to be 1 inch of rainfall. For the rest of the state, or the Central and Eastern region, the water quality design storm is proposed to be 1.5 inches of rainfall. We are also proposing to update the design storms for channel protection criteria, overbank flood protection criteria, and extreme flood protection criteria. These are all based on a larger and more current set of rainfall data. Each of these design storms are proposed to be based on NOAA's Atlas 14, using the county average values plus a climate change factor. NOAA Atlas 14 provides hydrologic intensity, duration, frequency data to help us understand how rainfall intensities, frequencies, and storm duration affect the amount and rate of runoff. NOAA's Atlas 14 incorporates data up through the year 2020. Now, the climate change factors that we're proposing to use are based on county mean climate change projections out to the year 2100 for what is known as a high emissions scenario. Now, these climate change projections are from the projected intensity, duration, frequency curve data tool for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. This tool was created by the Mid-Atlantic Regional Integrated Sciences and Assessments, otherwise known as MRISA. I know that's a lot of words there, but for more information about MRISA and MRISA's IDF tool for climate change projections, I have put on this slide a web address for the MRISA tool and the data. You can go to this website to find out more about MRISA and how they develop this information. You can also go to our A-Storm website. As I said earlier, we have many past presentations that we provided to our stakeholder group on precipitation, stormwater runoff, and the use of the MRISA tool. Okay, the second key element of the proposed regulation updates. MDE also proposes to reinstate the requirement for overbank flood control statewide. This means that the 10-year quantity management will now be required for all new development across the state. With this requirement, the definition of managing the risk of overbank flooding is also proposed to be updated. MDE has proposed requiring that the post-development discharge rate for the 10-year 24-hour storm is based on future climate change projections using a climate change factor. So we're using the Atlas 14 county average plus the climate change factor, and that this post-development discharge rate is managed to a pre-development condition determined without a climate change factor. And that pre-development condition would be just Atlas 14 county average. So it's a county average, Atlas 14 county average plus the climate change factor managed back to the pre-development condition using just the Atlas 14 county average. The third key element, MDE has proposed updates to what is known as the ESD to the MEP. What are we going to require to meet ESD to the MEP? And we want to make sure that is not only updated, but it's also clear and consistently applied across the state. So the proposal is to meet the ESD to the MEP standard. MDE proposes to require that the full water quality volume for the site must be managed in an ESD practice. That's number one. Number two, the channel protection volume must be managed in either an ESD practice or a structural practice. And this depends on the required volume for the discharge point from the development site. So where the required volume for the discharge point for channel protection is less than or equal to 8,000 cubic feet, the channel protection volume must be managed in an ESD practice. Where the requirement for the discharge point for the development site is greater than 8,000 cubic feet, the channel protection volume must be managed in a structural practice. The last two key elements are the result of the first three. So as a result of the proposed updated design storms and quantity management requirements, Maryland will see an increase in the amount of stormwater runoff that must be managed in an ESD practice in portions of the state. That would be the central and eastern part of the state. And in addition, the updated channel protection and flood risk protection design storms and the updated ESD to the MEP standard will help to ensure that larger, more intense storms are consistently managed by our most resilient EMPs. The last thing I want to talk about here is our design manual updates. The design manual is incorporated by reference into our regulations. Therefore, when the regulations are updated, the design manual needs to be updated to be consistent with the regulations. So the primary updates that you will see in our design manual are to ensure that consistency with the updated regulations. We are also doing a couple other things with this design manual. We are removing obsolete or outdated criteria. A lot of this is in appendices currently. And this criteria that we're removing includes criteria referenced from other state agencies. We're going to now refer you to a website as opposed to having to create an appendix that could be outdated very soon after it's published. We're combining all of our BMPs into one chapter. We're consolidating duplicative practices. We're updating the BMP figures to match the new requirements. We're updating the design examples to match the new requirements. And then we're moving construction inspection, and maintenance criteria to an appendix. Now, if you've looked through our drafts, you'll notice that some of this hasn't been done yet. We are still working on updating appendices. I listed all the appendices that we're currently planning to include in the new manual. We're working on all of these, making sure that they're updated to match the new criteria. We are updating all the BMP figures. The draft currently doesn't have any figures in it because they're all being updated as we speak. And of course, the design examples. We're updating all the design examples so that they will match the new criteria. Once the comments are received as part of this process and we've reviewed them and we've updated our proposal and moved towards the next step, then we'll tackle updates to standard plans in the model ordinance, along with developing additional technical guidance as needed. So let's talk about our next steps. What happens after this process is over? MDE is going to review the comments and questions that we've received during this 90-day public comment period. Where needed, we will develop updates to the regulations and the design manual. The next step will move to the official or through the official proposed rulemaking process. This is where MDE publishes in the Maryland Register the proposed regulations and design manual for an official 30-day public comment period. We are estimating this will be sometime late spring, early summer of 2026. Now, after the 30-day comment period is over, assuming there are not any comments received that are would require significant changes, MDE will announce a notice of final rulemaking. We plan for that to be early fall of 2026. If we go through that process, the adoption of the updated regulations and design manual will be official 10 days after that notice of final rulemaking. Okay, that is the end of the overview. Now, at this time, we're going to move to the open comment and question portion of the listening session. Again, this is a listening session primarily to get the input from you. We will definitely consider everything that you have provided to us as we refine the proposed regulations and design manual update. We will try to respond to straightforward questions about process during this session. Technical questions, comments about, why we're doing things, and questions that require much more detailed discussion. We'll consider those as we move forward with the regulatory process, but we're not going to address those today. Again, please place your comments in the Q&A function. We will read each question or comment out loud in the order that they are received. If time allows, at the end of the session, raise your hand. There will be an opportunity for you to make a verbal comment. Once we call on you, we'll ask you to unmute your microphone. We also suggest that you follow up any comments or questions that you have posed today during this session with a written submission, again, to that email address that we provided earlier. And at this time, I'm going to ask my MDE co-host to read the first comment or question.
Hello, I'll start it off. Our first question is, it seems that each jurisdiction in Maryland, including the State Highway Administration, has their own interpretations and computations for stormwater management. How will the proposed regulation work to harmonize the methodologies and implementation of these proposed regulations? Thank you for your question.
Comment number 2, the State Highway Administration and several jurisdictions restrict stormwater management facilities within the public right-of-way to low-maintenance grass swales only. What work, if any, will be done by MDE to allow the use of these new regulations within the public right-of-way? Thank you for your comment.
Okay, I will read the next comment and question. Is it MDE's intent to require the quantity management of overbank protection QP10 and QP100 for redevelopment only projects? This could be an unintended consequence of incorporating climate change factors in post-development calculations. Thank you for your question.
The next question is, how is this draft different from the last draft that the formal work group commented on?
The next question is, will landscaping recommended planting list be provided in the updated manual? Thank you for your question.
Where your presentation mentioned more treatment in ESD for Central Maryland, how does that relate to retention? Thank you.
Next question. In table 2.5 of the manual, shouldn't redevelopment impervious area requiring treatment, IR, equal 0.5 times pre-development AI plus DAI, where DAI equals change in impervious area? Thank you, Kim. We'll look into that.
The next question is, if ESD to the MEP is demonstrated, can the water quality requirement be met using water quality banking? Or do we need a variance to do so?
Two questions. First, Eileen Glad has been talking about going to shorter storm durations for small urban watersheds, since the 24-hour storm is not good at predicting the kinds of events that typically generate most flood peaks in those watersheds. Is that under consideration?
Next question, is the QP10 the only quantity management required? Or will there also need to be QP comparisons for the 2-year and the 100-year events using the same Atlas 14 versus Atlas 14 plus the Marissa factor? Thank you for that comment.
Okay, the next question. Is there better guidance provided for addressing ESD on industrial commercial sites where micro watersheds are unachievable and or the site has experienced notable earth fill? Thank you for that question.
Okay. Mandatory 10-year quantity management for new development will be limited to a pretty small subset of development, especially in areas that are already heavily developed out. How can a requirement like this be justified as an effort to address climate change since the results will be so limited? Thanks, Mark.
There's a bullet in the new water quality volume section where you calculate the treated rainfall depth that says, note that treating more rainfall than required does not result in additional water quality treatment. Does that mean we can't overtreat in one drainage area to compensate for undertreating in another? Thank you for your question.
Next question, would the MDE calculators be updated with the manual update? Thank you.
Okay, next question. Tess Thompson of Virginia Tech presented on channel stability from research done in Maryland and proposed that in order to protect channels, we need to consider sediment transport capacity and shear stress and not only discharge. She offered to work with MDE to offer recommendations. Thank you for that comment, Andy.
Okay. There are several uses of the word shall in the design guidelines. Is the use of shall intentional? Could this word be changed to allow for local agencies to weigh in for site-specific conditions? Shall was, yes, intentional.
Has MDE performed studies or examples to understand implications of the new regulations on linear projects with steep slopes and other topographic constraints? Thank you for your question.
Next question. Design and installation of mandatory 10-year quantity management adds to the cost of development and adds additional inventory, which requires long-term tracking, inspection, and maintenance costs to local jurisdictions. Are the potential results from the requirement justifiable? Thanks for that question, Mark.
Okay, I'll take the next question. MDE currently has a separate memo related to stormwater design guidance for solar panel installations. Is it MDE's intent to incorporate stormwater guidance associated with solar panels to clarify ESD practices for such in this updated manual? This is important for developer jurisdictional guidance. Thank you for that comment and question.
Okay, the next question. Does MDE intend to issue design spreadsheets for the ESD practices with the manual update?
Okay,
Thanks.
the next question. Sorry. Will MDE be developing and provide a uniform or standardized stormwater management calculation spreadsheet for the upcoming changes?
Next question, will you be incorporating, updating the technical memos?
And I'll do the next question. Will you provide guidance assistance for linear transportation type projects? The last manual favored open land development sites. We have significant issues with linear projects within narrow right-of-ways. Thank you for the question and comment.
When and where will responses to these questions, comments be posted?
I think I can answer that and just say that we appreciate that question. If time allows, we will provide answers prior to December 19th. I'm not sure if it's going to be doable or not, but they will be posted on our website. We'll let everybody know through an interested parties email list.
Jennifer, can I add that we are looking into each comment that you're referring to providing written responses? I just want everybody to know that we are considering all these comments and we really appreciate them.
We just don't know if we're going to be able to do it before
Right.
December 19th, but we will.
The next question is, can the study that recommended the WQV of 1.5 inches be provided?
I can answer that question somewhat by saying go to our A-Storm website, and there are the first couple of proposals that we provided to the stakeholder group for comment are posted on the website along with some responses to the comments received. And there's some information in the presentation material as well that all point to this comment or question.
The next comment question is, it makes sense that we should be updating the stormwater manual compliance standards on some regular basis in order to incorporate updated rainfall data as it is collected. But couldn't this be accomplished more simply and efficiently by issuing supplemental updates to the manual rather than adoption of a new code?
Okay, next question. Will MDE consider using the in-situ soil procedures that are currently being used in some jurisdictions as demonstration cases? Thank you for that question.
I love these questions. Will the poultry farm guidelines be updated? I think we've had a lot of questions about guidance documents. Yes, the guidance documents are all going to need to be updated to being, you know, in line with the new regulations. It's going to take us a while, but
Yeah, and I'll add that the poultry farm, I'm assuming you're referring to the standard plans, and yes, they will be part of this process. All the standard plans are going to be updated.
The next question is, does the official comment list incorporate comments made to Raymond Barr of MDE and Casey Reed of MBIA made at the Maryland Society of Engineers annual conference? Thank you for your question.
I think that I would say that if there are particular comments you're referring to, please send them through the MDE email address that's sitting here, right here on the slide that we're looking at.
Next up, can we please remove rain barrels from the manual now?
Okay, next question. Is MDE considering any cross-jurisdictional watershed-based regulations and permitting rather than limiting just to each jurisdiction? Thank you for that question. Okay, we know that it takes time to type in questions, and I see another one just came in. We're going to be here, and there might be some silence where we're waiting for the next question to come in, but we're hanging in here. Go ahead, Amanda.
all right. The next one is, will decompaction of post-development soils be considered in the new manual? Thank you for that comment.
Okay, we have another question. Has MDE considered replacing terminology such as average recurrence interval, ARI, with annual exceedance probability, AEP, to reduce confusion with the public for rare events, in other words, the 100-year? Thank you for your question.
Next question. Will downstream drainage and maintenance easements be required to tidal outfalls? If so, development will probably cease.
Okay, the next question. The proposed maintenance guidelines state that conveyances should be included in triennial inspections. To what extent and detail will these inspections expect to cover? Thank you.
Okay. Water quality treatment shall be addressed separately for each 12-digit watershed. This will impact linear transportation state highway projects which tracked water quality treatment by 6-digit watersheds. Thank you for that comment, Megan.
Okay, how was the 8,000 cubic feet cutoff for channel protection volume usage of ESD volume versus structural determined?
Oops. Thanks, Michelle.
While this proposed regulation speaks to stormwater management, what impacts changes will be made for sediment control practices? I can answer this one. This group here is working fervently on getting out the stormwater management regulations within the next year. We've also been charged by the Maryland General Assembly, a law was passed to also update the sediment control regulations for changing weather patterns, climate change as well. And we intend to do that once we're finished with the stormwater management regulations, and we hope to sync them up with these regulations.
Okay, the next question, will MDE consider adding new BMPs to the updated manual that other nearby jurisdictions have or are incorporating as acceptable stormwater management practices? Thank you for that question.
Okay. I believe that you said the NOAA Atlas 14 was based on data up to 2020. Is there any way that more recent data can be incorporated? We're seeing more frequent, higher intensity, shorter duration storms that are overwhelming our storm drain and stormwater management BMPs. Thank you for that question.
Okay, will there be any grandfathering windows for projects, or is this a jurisdictional approving agency decision?
There are grandfathering provisions. We're calling them, we're not calling them grandfathering anymore, but there's provisions for projects that are in process. So I would ask you to go back and read through the regulations, and there's a list of dates there. And that's one of the things that we're interested in getting feedback on. So thank you for that comment, for that question. The next question is, in light of these proposed changes, what outcomes are being tracked as goals for improvement? For example, extent of flooding, water quality, etc.
Okay, the next question, comment. On that note of decompaction, will MDE consider soil restoration as a non-structural practice? Arlington, Virginia has promoted this in single-family residential properties. It is a good option for smaller properties. Thank you for that question and comment.
Okay, regarding the Atlas 14 question, that's what the use of the MRSA correction factor is for. Thank you for that comment.
Can there be a way to streamline the approval of alternative technologies with some flexibility to allow for more treatment of ESD, not just pretreatment or use in redevelopment? Thank you for your comment.
These are great comments and questions. Keep them coming.
It's like magic, Jennifer. Next question. Will there be relief for small projects, for example, single lot developments on larger lots regarding 10-year management?
Okay, next comment. I think this is a comment. The draft one-year treatment calculations appear overly complicated and will likely increase design and review times, in contrast to the state's position on streamlining review and permitting processes. Considering the limited rainfall amount we're dealing with here and the likewise limited benefit to, and Mark, I apologize that the Q&A has a maximum number of characters, so if you could continue your thought in another Q&A, I'll finish reading it.
All right, we're going to go to Dan and then we'll get back to Mark if he's typing away. Will existing approvals for proprietary stormwater practices carry over with this manual? Context modular wetlands, for example, are MDE approved to treat ESD volume? Are those approvals still good? That's a good question. Thank you.
Brad, do you want me to? I'm going to finish reading my Mark's question or thought. Considering the limited rainfall amount we're dealing with here and the likewise benefit to overall climate-related resilience, can this approach perhaps be simplified? Overcomplication also makes it more difficult to maintain consistency. The new calculation requirements seem like a lot of A lot of something, a lot of
Or you
juice,
just talk too much, that's all.
a lot of juice. Okay, Ray, you got the next one.
Oh, here he goes. The new calculation requirement seems like a lot of squeeze for not a lot of juice. Oh, Jennifer said that. Okay. All right, Michelle, it's your turn.
For permits such as the 20 SW, General Stormwater Permit, that reference the current version of the design manual. If the new manual is effective mid-20 SW permit term, how does this affect sites that are currently working towards the 1-inch WQV if the site is in the region that is now proposed to be 1.5 inches? Thank you for your question.
Next question. How do we get on the list for seeing, recording, and Q&A for all 3 sessions? When will those be available? I believe the first one has already been posted on our website, the one that occurred on October 22nd. So where you got access for this Zoom meeting, that's where everything is being tracked. Is that correct, Michelle?
It's in the process of being posted now. Mhm.
Okay. I spoke too soon. Yes, we're going to put them all up on our website.
Okay, next question. Will retrofits or repairs for existing stormwater management facilities be required to meet the revised rainfall depths? Thank you for that question.
We have a new question. Will the
Okay.
manual, oh, sorry.
All right. Will the manual provide guidance on what is required to demonstrate safe conveyance? Does this imply that all ponds designed for 10-year control must also be analyzed for the 100-year event? Thank you for that question.
Each specific stage of pond construction must be approved by the approving agency before moving on to the subsequent stage of construction. Who is the approving agency? An on-site compliance inspector, one who reviewed and approved the project, or other? How will this be accomplished in a timely manner? Thank you for your question.
Okay, next up. Since the water quality volume calculation includes both pervious and impervious areas, how is the 50% treatment requirement for redevelopment calculated? 50% of the water quality volume of site, or water quality volume includes 50% of AI?
Next question. The manual provide guidance or examples on how routing should be done if a BMP drains to a closed storm drain system, as BMPs use SCS methodology, but storm drain sizing is done using rational method. Thank you for that question.
Is an H&H analysis required for any POI even when there is no increase in impervious area by default, or is it left to the discretion of the reviewing agency? That's a good question. Thank you.
Will MDE be collecting stream gauge data post-regulation change to determine effectiveness of the new regulations? Thank you for your question.
Do you expect any significant updates to the Maryland Pond Code 378 and specifications? Good question. Thank you.
Is it necessary to require that 100% of the design runoff treatment volume, especially the channel protection volume, be stored in the voids of the pea gravel and gravel layers for a submerged gravel wetland? Thank you for that question.
Okay. Water quality treatment must be provided in an ESD practice. Shouldn't this apply only to new development? Thanks for that question.
What changes, if any, does MDE anticipate with the federal cuts to climate change studies and collection of storm data? How will this impact the proposed regulations? Thank you for your questions.
MDE should consider requiring a 100-year overflow path to be identified on the plans in the event of an extreme event. This is especially needed in residential areas to protect homes from flooding or worse. Good comment. Thank you.
I think I'm next. How will existing credits for impervious areas treated in water quality banks be impacted when the new requirements increase the PE requirement from 1 to 1.5 inches? And the existing credits were based on a PE of 1 inch requirement. Will they still apply at 1 to 1? Thank you for that question.
Okay. Can somebody else go?
Yeah, is there a technical reason for the removal of the 12-inch base option for permeable pavement? Thank you for your question.
We are told to not use the volume within the ESD facilities to route. Can this be looked at as the volume is available and for very minor increases in 10-year discharge, this can be helpful to avoid waivers and variances? Thank you.
Will MDE require temporary stormwater management, TSWM, devices or treatment for interim conditions, similar to what Anne Arundel County has currently started requiring? Good question. Thank you for that question.
Okay. It appears that ESD practices may not be mandatory for redevelopment in pervious areas. Is that correct? That's correct. There's a preferred practice. We want you first to do ESD, but if you look in the chapter, you'll see the preferred discussion.
Yeah, you need to go to that part of the chapter and read that. It's not a yes or no question answer to that question.
Okay, after the new regulations and manual come into effect and other guidelines are being updated, will the 2015 guidelines for state and federal guidelines still stand?
Oh.
Could you please clarify what constitutes safe conveyance for the 100-year storm under standard number 6 and how far downstream this conveyance is expected to be evaluated or provided? That's a good comment. Thank you.
What was the reasoning for moving from small storm hydrology method to NRCS method for quality requirements? Hydrology yields 0.95 inches of runoff, and NRCS proposed methodology would only yield 0.79 inches. Thank you for that comment.
Okay. Consider including that open space areas be downgraded from hydrologic soil groups A to B to B to C and C to D to account for soil decompaction resulting from development when managing CPV, QP, and QF. Thank you for that comment.
Would the new regulations require ESDV and IART both to be satisfied for a project? Currently, there is no discussion about IART in COMAR. However, it is still being required for state and federal projects. Thank you for your comment.
Next question. Consider including that for a rate-based offline design, the RCN should be adjusted according to the current Appendix D10. Thank you for that question.
I think I'm up next. Will the scattered commentary on geofabrics be updated to reflect availability of a wider array of products and performance from the geotextile industry? Thank you for that comment or question.
Will the soil sampling methodology referenced in Appendix A, not included in the drafts, be updated as part of the new document? Yes, it will be.
Will the storage provided in practices designed solely to meet the WQ requirement be credited toward the CPV volume? Thank you for your question.
Is the supplemental draft clarification on submerged gravel wetlands from 2014 going to be fully incorporated? There have been a number of inconsistencies, especially on the Eastern Shore, from firm to firm when reviewing designing submerged gravel wetlands. Thank you for that comment and need for clarification.
Should the revised manual include, sorry, Amanda, can you take this one?
Not a problem. Got it. Should the revised manual include consideration to storm events such as the 200 or 500-year ARI, where developments need to establish finished floor elevations for critical infrastructure such as hospitals, emergency services, and flood evacuation buildings? Thanks for that comment.
There are instances where site geometry and existing drainage patterns limit the size and layout of stormwater management ESD devices. For example, the length to width ratio for submerged gravel wetlands has made some site development overly challenging, where a perfect square and rectangle facility don't fit. Will there be flexibility? Thank you for your comment.
Will the current stormwater institutional management plan at BWI need to be updated to comply with any upcoming changes? Good comment. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure which question we're on.
The next question is from Bob Bathurst.
I'm still having trouble. Will infiltration practices be recategorized to be ESD practices? Sorry.
What's RR? The next question is, will these changes impact the CBCA regulations? Is that Chesapeake Bay critical area? Thanks, John, for that question.
The next question is, will there be differences in standard recommendation specifications per region? For example, Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, etc. Issues on the Eastern Shore with submerged gravel wetlands was previously mentioned. Thank you for your comment.
Much of the performance of ESD practices are predicated on their maintenance and upkeep. Will this document look to incorporate these in the rules or potentially a companion document? Thanks, Aaron.
I'll just read Kim's still having trouble. Kim's comment. as I see a number of you have said, RE, excuse me, RR stands for runoff reduction, as opposed to ST standing for stormwater treatment, and this relates to the efficiency of pollutant removal. Thanks, Kim, for that comment.
Okay, the next comment is table 4.1 in draft manual says that a minimum of 1 acre is required. Can this requirement be met if there is high groundwater? Submerged gravel wetlands is a good option for high groundwater, but minimum area can limit any ESD use for a situation. Thank you for that comment. Everyone.
Okay, the next question is, the presence of multiple land uses, such as woods, open space, results in 0 runoff depth for rainfall events of 1 inch and 1.5 inches. Therefore, it is recommended to compute discharges using the current Appendix D10 method. Thank you.
Can the 48-hour drawdown requirement be removed for CMAQ managed facilities to allow for maximum runoff reduction between storm events?
Piggybacking on Aaron's question about maintenance, a lot of the costs for maintenance are related to plant replacement, but the designs are still volume-based, so it's hard to justify the plant's role in the design and effectiveness of the BMP. Thank you for that comment.
Okay. Kim, I want to thank you for pointing out an error, by the way, in the table. Currently, the area used to calculate the ESD requirements has been interpreted differently across jurisdictions. Some require the use of the limit of disturbance, while others require the use of the property boundary. Has this been clarified in the new manual? Very good question. Thank you.
Will the revised regulations clarify how cumulative disturbance should be determined for multiple less than 5,000 square feet projects on the same site, providing a definition or guidance? Thank you for your question.
Will the state dictate LAS values to be used in H&H modeling? Delaware uses a different LAS for their RPV storm 1-year event versus the LAS for the CV FV 10-year or 100-year event.
Anne Arundel County has their own POI, pre versus post analysis process, using ultimate zoning RCN values as published by Anne Arundel County. How will MDE harmonize or dictate how this is done in the future, utilizing their future climate factors for pre and post development? Thank you for that question.
Okay, the next question. Will the blanket ban on D-soils be removed for permeable pavement. Suggested to instead move to an infiltration-based calculation methodology. Thank you for that comment.
Many jurisdictions require analysis of stormwater storage and discharge using WIN-TR20 exclusively. Can this manual be updated to allow use of more modern programs such as HydroCAD or Bentley software that yield the same computational result but are easier to use? Thank you for your question.
Since the equations in Appendix D11 using synthetic TR55 rainfall distribution are not congruous with the NOAA rainfall distributions, will MDE derive new equations to replace it for NOAA BCD zones? Thank you for that question.
If preliminary soils investigations show great uniformity in soil type and infiltration capacity, can the number of infiltration tests be reduced? Thank you for that question.
Okay. Would just like to comment that training sessions hosted by MDE on the new regs would be very welcome during the final rulemaking and early implementation. Couldn't agree more, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Okay, if the storage volume requirements are increasing, it would be helpful if the maximum drainage areas for devices is increased and the recommended ESD maximum storage depths is increased to offset the expansion of stormwater management footprints. Thank you for your comment.
Please consider including more emphasis in Chapter 3 on limiting the placement of capture practices in fill soils. Concentration water into fill is inadvisable and needs to be avoided. We see too many plans coming with practices perched atop unacceptable fill. You'd think it would be obvious, but thanks, Mark.
Wet swale is required to have small orifice for release of channel protection volume. In practice, these small orifices for such a small volume behind check dams are prone to clogging. This could be considered in the final draft. Thank you for that comment.
Will an in-situ sensor option monitoring data be incorporated to reflect true performance of a stormwater management BMP as part of compliance efforts? This would be in lieu of credits performance as expected by the design manual. Thank you.
With CPV and QP10 required, many more structural practices will be required, requiring concentrated outfall locations, which has been problematic in the past. What do you propose for sites that do not have points of concentrated outfalls? Requiring easements from downstream landowners is often I'm sorry, your question got cut off.
While we're potentially waiting for the rest of that question, next question comment is, I would prefer to use site-specific rainfall intensity and change factors instead of county-specific numbers, as there's often large differences between northern and southern portions of some counties. Thank you.
Okay, and finishing up Daniel's comment, requiring easements from downstream landowners is often impossible. Thank you.
I'm not sure whose turn it is, but I'll read this one. John, thanks for saying this. Thanks for your efforts and transparency. We're about ready to open this up for the verbal session. If you all want to stay around, see if anybody raises their hand. Michelle is going to call on you if your hand is raised to unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment. Thanks.
Okay, I just enabled everyone. If you would like to make a question, make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll allow you to do that verbally. There's a new question in the Q&A. Will MDE consider updating the Maryland's waterway construction guidelines? They were issued in 1999. Thank you for your comment.
There's another comment or question in the Q&A. I'll read it. Will practices like N1 and N2 be revised to allow a treatment equal to 1.5 inches where the requirements are increasing? Thank you for that question, Jimmy.
Okay, that looks like there's a comment from Bob Bathurst. MD dam safety permits take months to secure. Is there a way to get earlier feedback on dam breach analysis and dam classification? This is a meeting about stormwater management, not wetlands and waterways construction or dam safety. Anyway, thanks everybody for those comments, though. We'll pass them along.
We have one, oh, we have a few new comments. I guess it's my turn. I'll go ahead and read the next one. Some jurisdictions require under drains in all ESD type facilities, regardless of whether the manual shows them or not. Recharge volume will be difficult when the stone under the under drain is limited by the jurisdiction. Thank you for that comment.
There's another comment here. The new manual restricts submerged gravel wetland volume to 8,000 cubic feet. If you back calculate out of that, it equates to 1.5 acres of impervious area. How this will impact large industrial sites been studied. The unlimited submerged gravel wetland drainage area volume currently, the unlimited submerged gravel wetland drainage area volume allowed currently was the only option. Yeah, it was misapplied. That's why we're changing it.
The next question, since there are no illustrations, can you please confirm what is meant by ponding storage above the surface? See sizing criteria in Chapter 3, page 2.52. Is this above the top of the mulch layer or bioretention soil mix media?
We're working on the figures right now, Kim, and it's above the BSM.
There is a request to please post the links on the slide to the Q&A.
The links, all three of these links have been posted, I believe, but the one that may not have been posted is the one here to MDE's Stormwater web pages. Not sure if that was posted or not. If not, can one of the co-hosts post that to the Q&A, please?
Thanks, Michelle.
A note regarding the dam safety. It is very much related to the size and depth of these facilities. Knowing early in the process whether the facility qualifies for an exemption from small pond approval is needed. Thank you for that comment. Okay, as long as comments or questions are coming in, we're going to stay here until 4, but I did want to go ahead and give you some final thoughts in case some of you want to leave early. Again, thank you for attending the listening session, and please visit our website. That's the one in the middle here that's listed. This is where the session recordings will be posted. This is where you can register for the in-person session as well. Also, Please send your comments and questions to the email address on this slide. This is the same email address that we posted earlier. It's also in our Q&A. And again, I can't emphasize enough that additional information on the background of the requirements and how they were developed can be found on MDE's A-Storm website. The link to that website is at the bottom of this slide. And again, we'll stay as long as the questions and comments are coming in. Thank you. Amanda, I think it's your turn. There's a comment.
Sorry, I'm very sorry about that. I was trying to answer the responses to the comments while sitting here. Given submerged gravel wetlands are being misused under the current regulations, will MDE provide guidance and/or variances on how to design ESD to treat large impervious drainage areas, such as truck courts, where it is inefficient and/or feasible to break up the drainage areas? Thank you for that comment. We appreciate it.
There's a new question. Different jurisdictions often interpret freeboard requirements differently, measured from the ESDV ponding elevation, tenure, WSEL, etc. A more consistent approach would be appreciated. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, I think we're going to close the session. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, the recordings will be posted on our website. Thank you so much. Have a great day.